You know, movie trailers are supposed to get us hyped, but what happens when one drops and the reaction is, well, just instant backlash? Today we're going to dive into a really sharp, pretty cynical takedown of the new Supergirl trailer. It's a critique that honestly puts the whole blockbuster marketing machine right under the microscope.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? When we see a brand new trailer, are we actually getting something fresh and original, or is it just another copy-paste of a formula that we already know works? According to this particular critique, the answer is not even a question.
Okay, let's get into it. The really wild part of this whole thing is that the judgment call was made before the trailer was even watched. Yep, it all started with just a few cynical predictions.
So, based on who was making the movie and just, the trends we're seeing everywhere, this critic basically called their shot. They predicted three things. First, that it was going to have that quirky Guardians of the Galaxy style humor. Second, it would lean really heavily on some famous pop song to set the mood. And third, the main character would have that kind of cynical, I'm over it attitude. And right off the bat, the movie's own tagline was seen as the first giant red flag. Truth, justice, whatever. I mean, for this critic, that phrase alone just screamed a kind of nihilistic anti-hero vibe that set a really negative tone from the get-go.
So now we're on to the Guardians formula. This is where those predictions just slammed right into reality. The argument is that the second the trailer started playing, all those fears were pretty much confirmed. It wasn't just inspired by the Guardians formula, it felt like they were working from the exact same blueprint.
And the comparisons got super specific. I mean, the use of a classic pop song, in this case it was a Blondie track, that felt like a total Guardians move. The shot of the spaceship landing, it was described as looking almost identical to a scene from that series. The whole vibe, action comedy with a quirky team, it just felt like a complete do-over.
This quote just nails the whole feeling perfectly, doesn't it? The similarities were apparently so obvious, so in your face, that the critic literally had to ask if they'd clicked on the wrong video. Like, am I accidentally re-watching a movie I've already seen? And well, this feeling led to the trailer getting a brand new nickname, Guardians of the Supergirl. It's kind of funny, but it also just perfectly sums up the entire problem here, that the trailer just didn't seem to have any identity of its own. It felt like a carbon copy.
Okay, let's move on to the critique of the tone itself, because this analysis went way deeper than just the music and the visuals. Oh yeah, it took a really sharp aim at what the trailer was actually made of, the writing and the hero's whole personality. This line right here was pointed out as a perfect example of just lazy writing. The second you hear a character say, "This is not going to end well," we all know the punchline is going to be, "For you guys." It just felt so predictable.
And then there's this line. This is supposed to be the big one, the line that defines Supergirl's entire cynical worldview. It's their attempt to show she's the dark, gritty realist, compared to our cousin Superman, the big blue Boy Scout.
So, how did that attempt at being all dark and edgy land? Well, according to this analysis, it completely face-planted. The reaction was summed up with this pretty memorable phrase. The whole attempt to be cynical just came off as totally forced, with no real bite to it whatsoever. So after tearing apart the formula, the writing, and the tone, we finally get to the final verdict. And from this point of view, it is a truly scathing assessment of the trailer's total failure to create any kind of real excitement. So the final judgment call was pretty simple. The trailer is just utterly generic. It didn't offer any new ideas, it didn't create any sense of stakes, or give you a real reason to care about what was happening. It just left this critic feeling completely and totally unimpressed. Now, to be fair, the critic does defend this whole takedown. The argument isn't that it's about hating on things just for fun. It's about having standards. The point is that we, the audience, should be asking for more creativity and some originality from our big blockbusters, not just quietly accepting the same old recycled formulas again and again. And this whole thing leaves us with a much bigger question to chew on. For these billion-dollar franchises, finding a winning formula is like finding gold. But at what point does sticking to that formula stop being a smart business decision and just become a creative failure? In Hollywood today, that line seems to be getting blurrier and blurrier every single year.